Hi, I'm Bill Dennison from the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and here's my colleague.
Heath Kelsey, also from the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, Integration and Application Network. We're going to be talking to you about our report card journey and the evolution of the report card process that we've undergone for the last decade or more, 15 years. And also end with some principles for the practice of conducting report cards. Some recent projects that we've had have been really exciting for us and have us rethinking the way we approach report cards. These projects have resulted in an understanding that report cards should not just be transparent, which has been a goal of ours for a long time, and is visualized in the information pyramid that we have here. So we have the report card sitting up at the very top and the supporting data at the very bottom. We want to make sure that it's a transparent process. If somebody picks up that report card, they can understand and access all the way down to the supporting data. So as you go up the report card, you have higher levels of synthesis of information and higher levels of information density as you go down the report card pyramid. The advances that we're seeing, or the things that we are evolving to, are an understanding that report cards also should be more holistic. It's not enough just to look at the ecosystem in itself anymore. We need to recognize that that ecosystem is a larger system that includes social and economic and cultural components. Report cards should, as much as possible, be stakeholder driven, really an organic process. And more we're realizing that our report cards are transdisciplinary. It can't be just natural science folks. It really has to involve lots of different levels of expertise. We're also beginning to reimagine the report card process, particularly with some of the projects that we've undergone in the past or recently, to involve much more stakeholder assessment and engagement in the report card development process. We really need to balance the social and economic and cultural factors with the environmental concerns, and we have a new focus on looking forward. Report cards traditionally are snapshots in time of condition of the ecosystem. We really want to start looking forward. What can we do to improve the condition in these systems that we're working on?
So we're going to tell this story as a journey. We're going to start in 1998 in the beginning with our initial report card in Moreton Bay when I was at the University of Queensland. Then we're going to move to the 2006 when we're going to tell the story of the Chesapeake Bay report card. And then in 2015 we're going to talk about the Mississippi River, where we expanded both the size and the scope of our report card. And then just last year, our capacity building exercise in the Orinoco River in the country of Colombia in South America. And then we'll hit on some issues associated with our future open sourcing report cards. So let's start with our Moreton Bay. And Moreton Bay in southeast Queensland started initially as a qualitative exercise in doing report cards. We literally sat around and said, well, Bramble Bay on our western shore is going to be the worst. Eastern Bay, that gets all the flushing, has the seagrass, dugongs, and turtles, is going to get our best grade, and then we're just going to sort stuff out qualitatively in between. And that was good enough for the time, because Mark Twain has this great quote: "There's something fascinating about science. One gets such wholesale conjecture out of such a trifling investment of fact." So we did this in like a half an hour. What we didn't understand and appreciate was the intense media scrutiny that would generate. We had front page news. The Brisbane River gets an F. And we recognized, well, we're scientists. We should be using science to do that. So what we did is we set up a monitoring program, the Ecosystem Health Monitoring Program, and created a rigorous report card framework. And we found, in fact, that our initial grading wasn't too bad when it came to the best and the worst. What we didn't do correctly was the intermediate rankings, and that's why we needed the quantitative measures to do that more effectively. Then we expanded that to include areas to the north and the south and the Sunshine and Gold Coast, but more importantly, we went into the catchments where the problems are arising and developed a set of freshwater indicators with our colleagues at Griffith University to generate a more holistic report card. And instead of the 10 reporting regions we originally started with in Moreton Bay, we have dozens of them, including our catchments. Then we brought this model back to Chesapeake Bay. And Chesapeake Bay, unlike Moreton Bay back in around 2000, has a whole lot of data. Monitoring the Bay program was a cooperative agreement between federal agencies and the relevant states. Had been collecting data since the mid '80s. Some of it in paper form as well as electronic form. So there's a lot of data, but it wasn't very synthetic. So what we wanted to do is convert these shelves of data, about 8 million to 10 million data points gathered each year for Chesapeake Bay, into something more synthetic. And that's what we generated with our report card. When we arrived on the scene, they had 101 indicators they were tracking with no hierarchy, no no rhyme or reason, no stories emerged. How's the bay doing? Well, depends on whether you wanted to look at oysters or you wanted to look at water quality. We had conflicting stories. We had happy talk, which was depicted in a book published in 2003 called The Chesapeake Bay Blues, or doom and gloom about perceived progress. And the Washington Post, our local paper, which is read by Congress, did an expose saying that the models that the Bay program was relying on instead of the data were overstating the progress. So that was sort of a doom and gloom effort. So what we did is we put together our report card. We did that in a little format originally, which was like the school kids get, the same publishers helped us generate that. And then we used the 160 some sites from around the bay and a bunch of indicators to produce these maps of report card scores and then a little summary of what it meant. And what we found is that was gave us an ability to actually track these changes and drill into 15 different reporting regions around the bay. We supplemented this report card and we started publishing in a larger format, by the way, and here's a more recent report card, also in a trifold format, also talking about what you can do to help the bay. And we supplement this hard copy with data on the website, ecoreportcard.org, and that website has a bunch of interactive maps and graphs, and we were able to hindcast report card scores all the way back to the mid-'80s, so we can look at some of these trajectories. Some of these indicators in some places are going up, some are going down, some are maintaining themselves as they go.
Right. The other thing to remember about the ecoreportcard.org site, if you remember the information pyramid, that report card website presents a little bit of additional information if people want to investigate a little bit more and they're curious and they want more information. They can go to that website and really dig into some of the data.
So the other thing we did is we invested in developing networks of citizen scientists. We started with the Chester River, and they had 80-some Chester testers that would go out and collect water quality samples, and a Patuxent River and a Seven River. So we have a suite of waterkeeper groups that organize volunteers, citizen scientists to go out and supplement our 160-some stations around Chesapeake Bay to be much more regional, much more localized, and target those areas. So we've got a nested effort of regional environmental reporting to go along with the sort of skeletal framework we generate with the overall report card.
That's right. And we helped them to standardize those methods because everybody was doing something a little bit different, and we weren't able to bring those results together, but we helped them to standardize some of those methods. So
we find that just like the Moreton Bay example from the get-go generates lots of media attention. You can see it in the newspapers, but our report card release last year was picked up by the Associated Press, CNN, and various print and online media and broadcast media. So Chesapeake Bay watershed only houses about 20 million people, yet our reach extended much farther. 124 million people were reached by that report card event. So once again, report cards are newsworthy.
That's right. One of the more recent projects that we worked on was in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, which is the Mississippi River Watershed Report Card, which I'll talk about a little bit more in depth in a moment. But And this one really represented a change in the scope and geography of the systems that we're working on. The Mississippi River watershed is about 41% of the continental United States, and it touches parts of 31 states. It's really important for transportation, it's really important for the national economy, and of course it's got some great environmental concerns: fish, wetlands, wildlife, bird migration routes, very serious flood risk and reduction concerns, great area for recreation, and provides water supply to a significant portion of the United States population. So there was a recognition that we're managing this giant river system for all of these things, not just to maintain healthy environments and ecosystems. And the report card that we generated needed to include all of those components. We also realized that we couldn't just do it on our own. We really needed the input and help of the stakeholders around the region. We also knew that we were going to get regional perspectives. So we made a road trip around the Mississippi River Basin, starting in the center, the upper Mississippi River Basin, starting in Moline. Then we went to Cincinnati, Ohio, to talk about the Ohio River Basin, the lower Mississippi in Memphis, Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Arkansas and Red Rivers, and then also Rapid City, South Dakota for the Missouri River Basin. And then after those meetings, we had a central meeting in Arlington, Virginia, kind of tie all those pieces together.
And each time we picked up more and more stakeholders. In the end, we had about 750 people that actively contributed to this production report card.
That's right, and that's what this arrow represents. At the end of that process, we developed scores in a draft form, based on the input that we had from the stakeholders and the user groups and the people that were involved in each one of those basin workshops. We chose these indicators for flood control, transportation, each one of these 6 areas, and presented the results in draft form. We presented them to a report card summit in
Louisville, Kentucky, about 200 people.
Yep, and we got a lot of great feedback.
That's a nice way of putting it. We were told we had to go back and do it better.
Yeah, that's right. It was very constructive feedback, but it was very good feedback. And we worked with a group called Conversant to help solicit that feedback. With the draft report card, we had a methods paper that accompanied it to let people know how we went about doing the report card and how the scores were developed. And then from that process, we really reinvented the report card. We did make it better. And the final report card is here. And it's a 4-page fold out in the middle that talks about the scores, where the data came from.
And the regional scores.
And the regional scores. And what the indicators were, where the data came from, and how generally we did it, what the Mississippi River means to the United States, and how the process of working together really developed something of a shared understanding and vision for the system, the Mississippi River. Another project that we just recently finished is in partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. And this is the Basin Report Card Initiative. The first one...
We just initiated that in 2015.
That's right. And it was 2015 was the first report card that we worked on with them. And this was the Orinoco River in Colombia, South America. Very stakeholder-driven process, even more so than the Mississippi River. These were local teams that were really excited about doing this. There were a lot of fun workshops and very organic process. And again, we developed the report card in both English and in Spanish. Bill is showing the report
So we
card.
had the 6 different water, biodiversity, management, governance, economy, landscapes and ecosystems, and people and culture. And we also broke it into the 10 sub-basins and talk about what it means and what you can do about it. So we had a little booklet here to go along with this report card release.
That's right. And again, ecosystems is only one part of the puzzle. We're looking at people and culture, water, biodiversity, management and governance, and economy. Those are equally weighted in the report card. As Bill said, we went to 10 subbasins. Each one of those subbasins has an additional insert that talks about the indicators and the results for that particular basin. And this is a map of the basin. And again, this is on ecoreportcard.org, where people can go to dig into the data a little bit and look a little bit more deeply into what's happening in that report card.
So we've been casting our report card process as this 5 steps, starting with conceptualization. You first get those conceptual diagrams that integrate your values and threats, choose the indicators, define the thresholds for those indicators, calculate the scores, and then communicate the results. We found that that's not sufficient, that we need to do some work ahead of the upstream of conceptualization, and that is ask the question, who's doing the grading? Who are you going to have this conversation with? Who are you going to bring in? The 750 people we brought into the Mississippi River, or the hundreds of people we brought into the Orinoco? Who's there? Then ask the question, what's being graded? Go about getting the grade, sharing that grade, and then ultimately, and here's the real goal of this whole process, is raising the grade. So the new first step is really about stakeholder mapping. How do you determine who's important to be a part of this conversation? And so that's the initial, new initial first step is stakeholder mapping. Then we can go through the actual production of what's being graded, get the grade, and share the grade. And then it gives us some impetus to go and raise the grade. And he led the effort in the Mississippi. You can talk about how you...
Yeah, so interesting story about this was, if you look at the date, the Mississippi River, Upper Mississippi River Conference in 2015 happened as the Mississippi River report card was released, and it caused quite a scene at that conference, and it led directly to an additional conference to figure out, okay, well, we got this grade, we're not really happy with it. How can we improve the condition of the Upper Mississippi River Basin? And so I helped facilitate this conference in October of 2016. It resulted in an action agenda for Congress, which we delivered to on Capitol Hill on January of this year, of 2017. So really looking forward to how are we going to improve the condition in the basins in which we're working.
So another way to approach this, this additional raise the grade fifth step is to start thinking about some scenarios that we could generate. So let's say we're not happy, not satisfied with our grade. We want to improve it, or at least keep it from degrading. And so how do we go about that? And so our approach is that we're just starting to explore is to combine our report card status assessment with a functional model using system dynamics modeling. And this is a causal loop diagram that connects the different features, that says, okay, well, you know, we want to end up with enough water and enough fish and wildlife, et cetera. But what are the things that are going to need to be changed to generate those changes? And then integrate those status and function into a response prioritization, which gives us some quantifiable ways forward to strategically come up with what we need to do to create these different scenarios. So if you look at our report card, generally we have this degradation that we suddenly recognize we better do something. That's what usually precipitates a report card process, and then we can start our intervention by future cards that can generate these scenarios that'll allow us to tell people what it's going to take to get from a C to a B to an A.
The other thing that we've started to think about more is the theory of change. Why do we think that these report cards are going to lead to the changes that we want to see in these systems? And this is broadly called theory of change. And so this is a simplified version of the theory of change that we've developed, WWF has prepared as part of our Basin Report Card Initiative. And it's really about the stakeholders coming together in the report card process to develop that shared vision and understanding of the current state, and that is the report card. And then from that report card and from that shared vision, we see new policies to address the threats, resources reallocated more strategically, direct actions taken to improve the conditions, And then ultimately, we want to see this improved or maintained health of the basin. And we can track that through the report card. So hopefully we'll see improving grades over time through the report card.
So there's some resources that we've applied to this. One is we've done a survey, and in the survey, we went to, and maybe some of you have been participants of this survey, where we've looked at people who've done report cards, and we've asked them a bunch of questions that have to do with the effectiveness of the report cards. And 80% responded that the report cards were effective at increasing public awareness. Less strong response in terms of the report card having a positive effect on resource allocation and stakeholder behavior. Now that's somewhat, I think, can be explained by the fact that you need multiple iterations of report cards to start to see that behavior change take place. But 60% said it had a positive impact on their basins. 86% said that the report cards whet the appetite and increased the demand for additional information. 97 overwhelmingly said that they would recommend using report cards for other regions. Another resource that we've got is a book that we wrote about using report cards embedded within a broader environmental campaign where you engage the community. Report cards are part of building community knowledge that are based on environmental data, and we talk about ways of obtaining that data, and that's available via our Ian Press.
The other thing that we've developed, again with our partnership with WWF, is a practitioner's guide, which we're very close to finishing. And this is going to be a guide for someone who wants to prepare a report card in a particular region. How do you go about doing it? From the very beginning, what kind of things do you need to have lined up? What conditions are right? What challenges might you face along the way? And how do you go about doing that process from soup to nuts?
Another resource that you may find useful if you're gathering stakeholders together is a game that we've created with WWF. We've launched the game. We did it at the River Symposium last year in India. We did it at the World Water Week in Stockholm. We did it at the Conservation Union meeting in Hawaii. It's very interactive. It involves role playing, involves developing trade-offs and score keeping. You try to improve your grade. It's a
lot of fun.
Somewhat raucous and a lot of fun.
Yep.
So stepping back a little bit, a couple of these principles that we've reflected on that have to do with our experience with report cards. First is the report cards need to be based on good data, solid science behind it. We need to make sure we communicate the main messages, not get caught in the minutia, but make sure the main messages bubble out of that data. Be transparent in all the processes, the methods, the data supporting it. Make sure the story we're telling is the right story, and use science visualization, good visualization techniques to communicate most effectively.
Mm-hmm. More and more, we're also realizing that report cards should include multiple perspectives from lots of different stakeholder groups and user groups. So involving them in the very beginning of the process is really important and a principle to shoot for. We really want to aim to develop that shared understanding. By having those multiple perspectives, that helps to develop that shared understanding and vision for the system. Again, we want to balance ecosystem, economic and social concerns equally. Environment and ecosystem health is one part of that. We want to as much as possible, we want to develop these products and processes and projects from the bottom up. They really should be an organically derived thing. And the last one, we really want to start thinking more forwardly. Let's begin to think of things in the future. How can we improve the situation? How can we improve the condition in the systems in which we work, and not just look at this as a snapshot in time or document the decline of a particular region. What can we do to improve the situation? So I thank you guys very much for listening to us today.
Thanks for your attention. We really look forward to interacting with you in the future.